Okay, welcome everybody. We'll do the housekeeping and get the PowerPoint up. Um, and I will start with a very interesting slide that I stumbled on as I was doing. I was looking for a timeline of Mesoamerica because it was kind of a little bit confusing. And I stumbled on this, which is just an excellent review for the last 5,000 years that Juan Jose and I have covered. Um, and it's all the civilizations. What's a civilization, Mr. John? Juan asked. And so here we have covered all of them. And I just want to point out the Olmecs. Here are the Olmecs. That's what we did last week. They're a major civilization. They're pretty early on. There's going to be a few minor civilizations earlier, but this I think is good in that it simplifies with the major ones. And you come down, you see that by the time you get to Athens, there have been a couple of Greek civilizations before, Minoan Greece. And they were not Aryan, right? This is a different ethnic group entirely out on the island of Crete. Mycenaean, this is the first wave of Aryan Greeks here. Um, and the shortest of all, well, maybe a little bit longer, is Athens and Sparta. Very, very brief, particularly compared to Minoan, that took on a lot of characteristics from Egypt, but out on the Isle of Crete, they're their very own thing. And yeah, Rome, we think of it as being long, but compare it to Egypt and even Maurya Empire, Buddhist empire, lasted a little bit longer. Alexander the Great and the founder of the Qin dynasty, both little blips. And then the Han dynasty, not quite as long as the Zhou dynasty, but longer than the Shang dynasty, all the first Chinese dynasties. So the color coding just helps. And if anybody's interested, I can just send this slide around because it's just fascinating. And here we get now to the next culture that's mentioned after the Olmecs, and that is the Teotihuacan. And I'm sorry, Mayan here, Mayan here, then Teotihuacan. The Mayans are a little bit earlier in terms of they reached their peak. This is very arbitrary, right? Um, uh, Indian Gupta dynasty, the reassertion of Hinduism. And we've talked a lot about the Byzantine Empire once we started recording. And oh my goodness, it looks like it's Juan Jose. Um, and we're going to get to the Mississippi mounds, which we talked about briefly last week. Hello, Juan Jose.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry for the delay.
Oh, no problem. I'm just going through this. You'll watch it on the video, Juan Jose. This is just an excellent graphic that summarizes what we've been doing for the last 15 months.
Awesome.
It's just wonderful. And in the future, we're going to get in a couple of weeks to the Incan and the Aztecs, latecomers, but we certainly have covered the Mongols. Um, and so in the new world, which new is an arbitrary term, if you look at what actually happened, human beings came here and then the seas rose and a whole group of people were marooned, if you had a better description of what actually happened. And the new world, Olmec, just to review, um, and then the next big one is the Mayan in the New World. leaving out smaller civilizations. The Muisca we'll talk about a little bit later. That's right near where Juan Jose is, and he did his show and tell with them. We're going to see that the Teotihuacanan is the disruptive one. Barbarians from the north, not exactly barbarians, but aggressive civilization from the north. And boy, have we heard a lot about aggressive civilization from the north, particularly in Eurasia, the steppes. The Anasazi, the people that came before the Hopis, they all died out around 1300. We visited the ruins on the Navajo reservation. And then in a couple of weeks, the Inca and the Aztec. Latecomers, relatively short-lived. So I hope I can finish Maya, but that was just irresistible, the opportunity to review. Now, if you just focus on regions, this is another way to reorder that same list, a little bit more detail, but regionally, so you can in one glance, oh, China, the Andes. And I talked about minor civilizations that didn't make the previous chart, and the Andean civilizations were one of them, particularly the Chavan, which we'll talk about maybe in a month. And here, where we are right now, is the Olmec, and we're going into the Mayan. This is too confusing. I'm going to go right past it, but it just makes the point there's a lot of churn and there's a lot more complexity, folks. And if we want to try to get through world history in a year and a half, we can't do it in this level of detail. But a lot of churn, a lot of environmental disruptions, migrations, natural disasters, but mainly human beings' restlessness and aggressiveness and bellicosity. So, after that real quick grand look, let's keep things simple. And this is a wonderful timeline that just the main points, which is all we can aspire to in a brief look at world history. And we started off last week with the Olmecs. This is their timeline. We went through them completely. We talked a little bit about their overlap with Mayan civilization and how some Olmec writings foreshadowed the use of the Mayan glyphs. Even the Olmecs were a little bit on to counting and math. We talked a little bit about the Zapotecs. We were interested in particular, one Zapotec tribe where women were so prominent. But today we're going to talk about the Mayans, and the skunk at the dinner party is going to be the Teotihuacanos. They're the aggressive people from the north. What is it about the direction of north? I don't know. We can speculate on that. And then some other Mesoamerican cultures that we really not going to have much time for. But in Mesoamerica, we'll get to the Aztecs. Now, this is just Mesoamerican. And Juan Jose noted that this was from his learning and teaching, a very prominent, and of all the New World, the action is in Mesoamerica, but there is some in South America that I'm just going to briefly mention today, but we'll spend a session on South American cultures, Andean cultures in particular. Incas, and the reason we got here is the old world meets the new world, and they met the Aztecs and the Incas and had no idea about all this. And we've only learned about it in the last 100 years, really. Um, the linguistic map shows a little bit of fragmentation. I'll allude to that a little bit later, but much too busy for the level of detail. Now, I do want to, because of Juan Jose and his show and tell, his show and tell was the Muisca, and they're number 23 down here. And you're going to see they're right near Bogota. So that was the one where Juan Jose talked about the lake where they made sacrifices to the gods by throwing in golden objects. And here's a better map showing the Muisca and how close they are to Bogota. Juan Jose mentioned in his presentation the two main branches, northern branches of the Andes, and the three valleys, the three land spaces that these two mountain ranges um, uh, create. And joining us just in the nick of time to see a picture of Bogota, where he probably is right now, is Tim. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, yeah, I'm in Bogota.
Okay, there you go. Right on cue. You'll have to watch the video to see the lead in, but here the Muisca Juan show and tell. And this is one of the gold objects. The Muisca were excellent jewelers, gold craftsmen. Look at this, the exquisiteness of this. And this isn't the only one. Many other. We're focusing on Mesoamerica, and the Muisca gets an honorable mention because they're so far north, and there must have been contact between them and the Mayans. Last week we kind of ended with the continuity hypothesis that the Olmecs, they were the mother culture, and just a few of the themes that we're going to be able to follow through on all the way to the Aztecs are ball games, the concept of the feathered serpent, the elaborate headdress of the kings, pyramids, bloodletting, which possibly led to human sacrifice in some, but for sure with the Aztecs, as we'll see, I hope by the end of this talk, for sure with the Aztecs. So the king headdress, the feathered serpent, this is an Olmec cave painting. You remember from last week. I'm just doing a review just to get you in the frame of mind of the mother culture, the Olmecs. They built a pyramid, not so striking now, but it was bigger, it's eroded. And the bloodletting, the clear evidence that they had that they felt they needed to sacrifice blood to the gods. At first, it was just cutting, no sacrifice of human life. But it was gratitude and payback because they believed that the gods had shed their blood to create a man. And royal blood was the best. So this was a upper tier elite contribution and didn't involve the sacrifice of ordinary people. You remember I showed this last week. The queen's tongue is being pierced to create blood. And then there were a couple of suggestions that was there child sacrifice? And we talked about that last week. So that's just a quick review of some of the themes that the Olmecs started. What I want to focus on as one of my tangents, and I couldn't help but do it because this was a big week for a sport here in America, and I'm going to make a connection. I am always looking to make connections with current events. But you remember we said last week that rubber was first used for making balls. And it was, and I announced that later on as a further explanation, that it was native to the Olmec civilization, the rubber tree. And so they figured that out way before the Amazons did. Well, who knows? But they're the first ones to use it in a civilization, and they used it to play ball. And here are all the different words for the ball game in the different languages. And finally, with this Spanish, pelota. Um, and so these are the early sites that were excavated where they found ball game artifacts in the Olmec time. Now let's just follow that forward and show at least the continuity hypothesis as it applies to the ball game. So this is where we're going to end with the Aztecs. And this is a modern player in Sinaloa, and he dresses up like an Aztec in his traditional game. And so here you have some imaginings of what ball would look like. This is probably Mayan. Um, and imaginings, what it might have been like, what they think it was. And remember, a lot of times, as we said over and over again, who knows what actually happened, but what people believe happened determines a lot of history. And so it's important. Oh, I'm sorry. How did this get in? Well, Tim will know. This is the week where the championship of the world was determined, the top level NBA World Series. And it was the Suns. Now I'm going to make a connection. One of the best players, Devin Booker, identifies as I almost said Aztec, as Mexican. And the Phoenix, they're located in Phoenix. The Suns have that strong Latino community, so it's very fortunate for Booker to identify and develop a fan base. And there have been some associations with the Mexican flag, but Devin Booker's not the only Latino Mexican playing basketball. UCLA, Tim's alma mater, has a wonderful center that took him very high in March Madness this year, surprising and playing a lot of upsets, along with a half Vietnamese player on UCLA. Cal had a Mexican basketball player, and now he's playing in Germany. I had to run that down because I knew Tim would ask me. The Warriors have a player who identifies Mexican here with the Mexican flag draped around him, and proudly showing off his jersey. All right, now let's go and look at evidence in Chichen Itza. This is where the Mayan story is going to end, but I'm kind of jumping ahead just to follow where the ball game goes, and the ball game ends up in this ball field in Chichen Itza. And here you have a relief of a Mayan relief showing the ball. National Museum of Anthropology, they labeled this as pelota, so they used the Spanish, so we're not 100% sure which of the Mesoamerican cultures this comes from. For sure, the Aztec worked it into their religion, and they had one of their gods offer a rubber ball as a offering, and with a quetzal feather stuck in just to emphasize the point. Lowland ball court, the classic shape a court, and this one in El Salvador. Remember, the Mayans spread over the Yucatan, Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. And the different forms of the different ball courts, they're not all the same, a little bit different design. The stelas, and we'll talk about what a stela is in just a few minutes, showing two ball players. This is showing where ball playing merges with human sacrifice. So there is a tradition in some of these cultures that the losers of a ball game die. And it's displayed here in this relief. Here's what an actual ball looked like. And they also had a mitt, which they call a handstone, to strike the ball. This is a court marker with a nicely worked relief of a deity that marks the boundaries of the game, what's in bounds, what's out of bounds. And again, another view of Chichen Itza from the viewpoint of maybe one of the players. A mural. This is a Teotihuacan, and they're going to come into the Mayan story in a very intrusive way towards the end of the Classic era. Arguably, they caused the end of the Classic era. And here's one with a cartoon balloon, what we would call a cartoon balloon, where they're showing what one particular character in the mural is saying, adding a new dimension to art. And various names. This is Poc to Poc. And here the Cortez was impressed enough, and at least, if not him, one of his descendants, who took a couple of Aztec players back to perform the ball game for Charles V. This is the Habsburg that we spent a whole session on tracing there, and we remember how Charles V was one of the major Habsburg, so there's a connection to one of our previous talks. And there are a few where the ball players are holding a stick or a racket, if you will. And in Tijuana, highlight is a very big sport, so there's got to be a connection with that. So now let's get back to, we finished with ball games. I just wanted to use it as an example of the continuity hypothesis and how one a fragment of a culture can continue through many different peoples. So we've done Olmecs. You remember this is not all at the simultaneous. This is just one flash. Olmecs were first, so there is a map where there's just yellow, and then the next color to come in is the Mayan purple. Aztecs aren't going to come until much later. And we're saving South America for later. We talked about the Muisca here. And so back to the original chronology, which I find so useful, and we'll zero in where are we. So we're right here, the Olmecs dying out, the Mayans are coming into their own. And this is the area where they come into their own. It involves 5 countries. Belize, throw them in there too, with all these other countries. And the main sites are here. We're not the only ones where we're going to spend much time talking about is Tikal and Chichen Itza. We've got to, in the interest of time, limit ourselves, but you could spend a whole year, obviously, talking about Mayan civilization. Because remarkable achievement, comparable to anything in what we call the old world. And we talked briefly about their writing, and we'll look at the slide again in just a second. Their art, their architecture, their mathematics, their calendar, their astronomical system, which is going to blow your mind, as I promised earlier. So the writing is similar to Japanese in that it has a syllabary. Instead of single letters, there's um, icons that show whole syllables mixed in with whole words. So in the Japanese frame, that would be a kanji, the whole words, and hiragana, the more syllabic based symbols. And they, as opposed to the Olmecs, who created maybe 60, they have 750, and they started that quite early, 300 BCE, taking up where the Olmecs left off. And this is just some of the glyphs. Here it's mixed in with the number system that you'll remember. And as I say, we only know about these societies in the last 100 years or so. Specifically, the deciphering of Mayan began exactly 100 years ago. So they looking at what the glyphs that are embedded here and what information are they giving. And we joked a little bit about the overlap with our concept of emojis. And just to review the math here, we got a math teacher here in the person of Tim. And so the concept of zero, 500 years before the old world, that's a remarkable achievement. That's a remarkable achievement. And so this is the system. And so the dating, which is going to be part of the astronomy talk, is so important, being able to keep track of numbers for dating. So
Question back to the numbering system.
yeah,
I'm just curious whether they have a base, it looks like a base 5 system. Is that right?
no, it's base 20. Well, I see what you mean. Yeah.
It's
So it's fives are summarized really easy, and then you go to 10 and add 1 for 11, and then but you start all over again with 20. So, and I
Yeah,
don't know, is it an accident that that's the number of fingers and toes we have?
I think it's no accident. Yeah, it just looks like 5 is a full hand, and then at 10 you get 2 full hands, and at 15 you get 3 full hands. That's why I was thinking base 5. But
Yeah,
anyway, yeah,
yeah.
cool, very
Like,
cool.
and when the fun thing about world history is comparing other systems, and so we've gone through when we did Sumer society, we learned how with one hand they could count up to 60.
Oh, because they had did the knuckles.
They had knuckles. That's right.
Yeah.
12 and the
Yeah.
base 12 is the number of phalanges on the first 4 fingers. That so and I'll later on I can demonstrate how the Sumerians count up to 60
Great.
on their fingers, which we assume was developed in the marketplace.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and we see
You owe me a finger.
and we see on the stock exchange the way the hectic trading in the old-fashioned way, or the bidding, people holding up their hands, and that's important. And so sure, the math was developed in the marketplace. And if one thing we've learned from world history is one of the driving forces is trade, that people just have an instinct to trade. And so Juan Jose is going into the right business. So, all right, back to the geography. Here are the highlands down here, different highlands, the mountain ranges. Remember when we were talking about the Olmec last week, there was a break in the mountains, which gave rise to the possibility of building a canal. By the way, I looked it up, and had they built the canal, it would have been only the 10th longest canal. There's already 9 canals longer than what that canal would have been, which was interesting to me. But of course, they went for the ultra short route across the Panama. So and then here, so that's the highlands, and this is considered the lowlands, the northern lowlands. And what we're going to see is that the civilization first takes off here in the middle between the northern lowlands and the highlands, gets destroyed, and then moves big time to the northern tip of the Yucatan, in particular Chichen Itza. And these are the arbitrary time breaks. So pre-classics take us all the way to 250. The classic period starts, and then there's going to be a collapse, but then a sort of resuscitation in Chichen Itza, and then finally the demise just as the Spanish arrive. And here are the actual locations. They're divided into the classic sites, which is the dot with the white circle around it. and the post-classic, which is a black square. Um, uh, and so you start off with the dots here, and the only two that I'm going to talk about are Tikal and Kalakmul. And I'm talking about them because they were the predominant ones, and they fought each other, of course, humans being humans. Um, I'm not going to talk about Palenque, which is amazing. I'm not going to talk about Copan, but and then we'll end up the Mayan period talking mainly about Chichen Itza with a brief mention of Uxmal for personal
Can I
reasons.
ask you a question?
Yes.
Are the post-classic sites so far into the Yucatan because they got chased into that area by someone, or?
I don't know, but there's one right on the beach here, and this is the most, I think, picturesque one, Tulum. But yeah, I'm sure there's a reason that they're not there. Here, when you go to Uxmal, you go to Merida, and you have to go inland to Uxmal. Why not build it? And I bet it was.
But Tulum is pretty destroyed. Was that because of invaders? Because
Probably.
it's pretty inland, but it's pretty well preserved, and Uxmal's inland, and that's pretty well preserved.
And the last one to hold out is Mayapan, which is dead in the center, as far away from the ocean as you can get. So already we have little bits of evidence supporting your hypothesis. Yeah. So the classic cities, Tikal is a UNESCO, and so it's protected. Just a few words about the architecture. It started off with stucco exterior, plaster facade, and they did quite a bit with cement and aggregate and water. They could transmit a lot of information and a lot of beauty with that basic stucco technique. And this is an example of stucco. But finally in the classic, that gets replaced by in the round sculpted stelae. And once you get, these things are more permanent, and you get more the use of the calendar system, the numbers being preserved. I'm sure that they use the long count in stucco, but it probably doesn't last as long as fully sculpted stelae. And here's Tikal and why it's a UNESCO site. You can see a solstice celebration. And I hope we'll finish up with an understanding of how sophisticated the Mayan astronomers were. Tikal, burial vessel, exquisite potter. Again, the headdress motif, a reenactment. This is a reenactment, and maybe what they're reenacting is their conflict with Kalakmul. And this is the violent tendencies of human beings, the restlessness, if you will. You reach a point in your civilization, you're not content, you need more. And so Tikal and Taco pretty close together, and went into full-on warfare. And this is Kalakmul. stelae not as well preserved. But they did have recover some pottery from there. And here we have the serpent, the recurring theme of the serpent. They had murals and uh-oh, I forgot to do something there. Okay. And Calakmul was reclaimed from the jungle. This is what it looked like in the 1880s. And I just want to say a word about a new technology that's revolutionizing archaeology. This whole Mayan city of Caracal in Belize, they knew it was there, but they had no idea how extensive it was. And they used this new technology, LADAR technology, light detection and range, that's what it stands for. You're tempted to say that it's a laser, but lasers are involved, but the lie is the light detection. And it works by bouncing thousands of pulses of infrared laser beams off of the geography below, and you get images like this, unbelievable. And so they could see that the ruin that they were looking at was 7 times larger than what they thought. And you could also see straight lines, which must have been roads. And the technology for doing, we won't spend much time on it, but this is how it starts. And then the images are processed through GPS using precise mathematical calculations to give you an idea of the topography in much more detail, so they can have images like this that reveal all you see from an airplane is jungle, but using this technology erases the jungle and just looks at what comes back to bouncing off of hard surfaces. And you can detect infrastructure, roads, lines, other images found that there were canals, they think probably canals in Tikal. So things fall apart. It's a combination of war with your enemies, but also infighting, overpopulation, possible environmental degradation and drought. The last two sound familiar. And so into this situation comes somebody from the north that's going to take advantage. And these are the Teotihuacanos. So they're well north of where the old Olmec waste was. But they heard that the Mayans had a lot of interesting stuff and they were kind of falling apart. So they organized, they were a warrior culture, as most northern cultures seem to be. This repeating theme of northern aggressive warrior cultures invading southern is just repeated over and over again. And I think it's an advantage agriculturally to being more in the south. And so those are the earlier civilizations that can produce a surplus. And the people up north who can't manage it because of the colder weather, maybe, look down with great jealousy, and what yet they can't trade for, they'll just go and take. There was a little echo of that for us when we were on the Navajo reservation. I say Navajo reservation because it was both the Hopi and Navajo. It was a very tenuous peace between the two tribes. The Hopis were the village people, the agriculturalists, and the Navajos were the aggressive people from the north. And they just have come down in the last 500 years. They got the poor Hopis, they got a double whammy. About the same time the first Navajos came down from the north, Coronado came with his expedition from the south. The interesting thing is, well, what about the southern hemisphere, where things would be reversed? And there is one example of a very warlike, aggressive people, the Mapuche, in southern Chile and southern Argentina. So there, because of everything's backwards down there, the aggression was reversed. It was the aggressive people from the south, the colder parts attacking the warmer parts. Just a theory, just a speculation. On we move, and this is what the Teotihuacanos could do. They had, in and of themselves, a very advanced civilization, much further north, so less tropical, but they managed to produce a surplus. As we'll see later, so did the Aztecs, big time. And now you look at this linguistic map again, and you can make sense out of some of the islands. Mayan spoken up here, a central Mexican language spoken down here, maybe a legacy from these fights. So the collapse comes in the post-classic civilization, the one with squares on it, shifts north. And we're going to just look at mainly Chichen Itza. And here is the observatory. And the slit windows in the observatory, or the caracol, which that lines up with the movements of Venus. Venus. And here's where Venus comes into it, and use your math. They measured the Venus cycle, which is 584 days, within an error of just 2 hours. And here's the interesting thing: 5 cycles of Venus equates to 8 365-day years on Earth. So that is fascinating. How in the world did they tumble to that? How much culture and observation did that take? But they had some superstitious beliefs too, that Venus, the morning star, was associated with the rebirth of their hero twins. And interestingly, that you encounter the motif of hero twins in a lot of Native American cultures, even in North America.
Even in Rome.
I'm sorry?
Even in Rome.
Oh, Romulus and Remus. Yeah, there you go. Very good. I liked it. But this isn't in keeping with the negative part of the so-called heliacal rising. So this is the morning star. It's the heliacal rising, and it can be associated with destruction. So there seems to be a contradiction there. I'm not sure why. But Venus was closely associated with warfare. Of course, Mars was associated with warfare for us and the Greeks, but Venus was. And we're going to look at that glyph in just a second. And as I said, the Caracol Observatory aligns with Venus's path. And Mayan rulers, just to get back now to the warfare and the hieroglyphic for warfare, they believed that Venus could predict a military victory. And so they would make their war plans dependent on the path of Venus. And here's the glyph that connects Venus. Now, I don't know exactly where Venus is in this glyph and what's war, but I know where to go to find out. This is the wonderful thing about searching for historical answers. You can find a whole article devoted to the Venus shell over star symbol, a long dissertation. And there were plenty of historical writings using their 750 glyphs describing what they believed about the helical rising of Venus, the morning star. And the
Is that on paper or rock?
The image you just showed.
I think it's a version of rock or cloth. I can't answer that in detail. So the interesting thing for me was the echo of how the Egyptians tracked the path of Sirius. So when in the winter months, when the Earth tips away from the sun, it also tips away from Sirius, and you can't see Sirius as long as the Earth is tilted that much. But when the season progresses and the tilt starts to even out, approaching the equinox, Sirius comes back, and the Egyptian priest figured out that the reemergence of Sirius was within 2 or 3 days of the floods. And that was enormously useful information. And it was information that their other calendars, just following the sun, couldn't match. So they had basically a celestial clock. That was so precise. Well, so did the Mayans with the Venus orbit, and we just don't have time to describe about the helical setting and that, and I'd be hard pressed to do it at this moment, but it's very much like the reemergence of Sirius. And so it's not surprising that astronomers were honored in Mayan society. Eclipses, they were dangerous, and they were described as they thought something big was taking a bite out of their beloved sun and their beloved moon. What was biting it? Probably a giant serpent. And so they got very good at predicting eclipses. Why? So that they could perform the appropriate ceremonies to ward off the bad effects of eclipses. And here it is. Here is their hieroglyph showing something eating either the earth or the moon. Back we go to the 1880s in Chichen Itza, as it's being reclaimed. All these great monuments were lost to the jungle during colonial times. And so this, after you clear out the jungle, look at this. And this is what LIDAR is going to discover more and more Chichen Itzas. And different components, the chalk mole, which when we took our kids to Chichen Itza was a favorite. This is another one that they was so beautiful that they moved it to the anthropology museum. This is another chalk mule at the top of the Castillo pyramid. Now, what are these chalk mules for? What we think now, and this is anthropologists speaking, this was where the human heart was put after the victim was sacrificed, not a happy place. And this is from a place I'm not going to try to pronounce. They had a very aggressive form of warriors. Here's this place. So it looks like it's halfway between Tihuacana and the Mayans. And this is their champion warrior from this city. And he's noted for his ethics. He's kind of a Spartacus story. So I just got to take a little tangent because you stumble on stories that you just have to be told. This guy was defeated by Montezuma. And Montezuma had heard he was a great warrior, and he offered to spare him from his destiny as a defeated warrior, which was to be sacrificed and have his heart cut out. He offered to spare him. And this warrior said, no, that would not be right. I need to embrace my destiny and do what I need to do to appease the gods. And finally, Montezuma talked him out of it and gave him an army. And his army went out and fought for Montezuma. And then he returned as a great victor. And Montezuma said, well, thanks, that worked out well. Now you're really totally free. And this guy said, no, I was still defeated once. I can't live with myself like that. So give me an honorable way out, and the way out that I'd prefer, instead of having my heart cut out, I would prefer to die on the battlefield, gladiator style. And the way they did it was this guy with his a single hand had to fight 8 other warriors simultaneously. And of course, he was killed, but he became immortal in his hometown for his quote unquote ethics, such as Aztec ethics were. Well, you're skeptical. How do we know that this is where they put human hearts? Maybe somebody made that up. Well, here's what the people at the National Museum of Anthropology come up with, and their lead arrow is receptacle for storing human hearts. Apparently, the evidence is overwhelming. You go around and you look at other things they point out, and you see the jaguar. And where did we encounter the jaguar before? That was the Olmecs. Remember, they had all those jaguar statues, and then they had the half man, half jaguar from their creation myth, which was that a woman Olmec mated with a jaguar to create a new species that they worshipped as a god. But the jaguar in his whole 100% jaguar form lived on in Mesoamerica. And here jaguars symbolize the earth and the realm of darkness. An eagle heart receptacle. And here is a chalk mule from the great temple of Tenochtitlan itself. And I think the expression on this face says it all. All right, so I see that we're at 10 minutes after. I'll have a few more things to clean up with Chichen Itza, but we're really just 5 to 10 minutes away from the end. But I'm going to stop there and take questions.
I don't have any questions, but those are wonderful.
Yeah.
I like how you tie things all together.
You know, I have one question. So, but this is like confusion question. And probably, so I can't remember how old I was when I went to Chichen Itza, but probably 50 years ago. And I thought that the guide said, well, the winning warrior, the winning ball player would be sacrificed because that meant that they went to the gods, kind of like a martyr myth kind of thing. So it sounds like they've cleaned that up since then, and it's the loser.
No, I heard the same thing. And I think when we were there, also about 50 years ago, I had
Oh, you were there when I was there. Remember, I was that person, third one on the left.
Yeah,
right.
You remember us?
I was there too, and I heard the same thing.
We were the ones that had the 2 unruly kids. Or was it 3 then, Aiko? I can't remember.
It was 3. It was 3 because there's a picture of me pretending to sacrifice someone on the thing.
Yeah, at the top.
Where you put the heart. They don't let you climb. They don't let you climb up to that anymore. And I think they didn't appreciate little kids
sacrificing their parents. Yeah.
Well, the thing that I was most worried, and we'll see this next week, is Uxmal. The pyramid at Uxmal. My God, we should have locked you in the car. You guys scrambled up that thing. Anyway.
In Chichen Itza, they were going up and down for my one up.
Yeah. It never made sense though. What would be the incentive to win a game, right? I mean,
well, if you thought it was, that you're going to go to heaven and have 50 virgins at your beck and call, I don't know.
I guess. Crazy.
But yeah, it would be counter evolutionary to kill off the good ball players.
Yeah.
Hey, Dad, I have a question. I have a question about, so you said there was like Tikal and then some other city kind of had a rivalry that was close by it. Is that right?
Right.
And it sounds like they're still discovering places. So do they know that there was this big rivalry through evidence, or just they're kind of assuming that, or could there be other big cities that were just as large of rivals with Tikal as that other one that they haven't discovered yet?
Yeah, I mean, I can't give you a definitive answer, but after reading about their writing system, they left a number of written records behind. This is not like our speculation on the Olmecs. I mean, we don't even know whether the Olmecs called themselves the Olmecs, or they didn't. We don't even know what they called themselves. But here we've got a lot of evidence, and a lot of it was destroyed by the Spanish. But remember, by that time the Spanish came, a lot of these places had been overgrown. And as we rediscover them and can read the glyphs, the 750 glyphs, which has all become available to us in the last 100 years, slowly but surely, the stuff I read sounded pretty definitive. There wasn't much hedging. So I don't know the exact answer, but that's my first take.
And remember when we were in Coba, that was 50 years ago or so, and it was most recently at the time excavated, and they had cut off, cleared out all the shrub and trees and stuff that were growing on the pyramid. They said that there were hundreds of these places in Mexico. They just didn't have the money to do it, and they didn't have that light technology. So they couldn't locate them, and figure out, it makes it a lot easier hacking through that jungle when you know that what you're hacking is not going to knock over a, special statue or something.
Yeah, but there's still risk. The National Geographic sponsored one of these expeditions and sent their cameramen, and they documented the whole thing. And what was terrible was leishmaniasis, a parasite disease, which can really destroy you. And half of the crew was affected to the point of chronic illness. And it's not easy to diagnose and treat. I mean, it's easier to diagnose than to treat once it's set. So the jungle also has other tricks up its sleeve for protecting against invaders.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just reading about that because I was getting bitten by a lot of sand fleas this weekend in Colombia.
Oh.
I was like a little worried.
Well, Jeremy in Indonesia got a rickettsial disease, tsutsugamushi, discovered by the Japanese. What does tsutsugamushi mean?
Tsutsu is to poke. Mushi is a bug.
So poke bug got Jeremy and infected him with a rickettsial disease that knocked out his platelets, Irene. They were all the way down to 10. He called on the phone and he described his affliction, and that he had all these red bumps around his ankles. And that's the most vulnerable place for bleeding when you have low platelets. And and he didn't feel well. And he was smart enough to get on a plane and throw himself onto a friend in Hong Kong. And they had the diagnosis within 6 hours, and I was talking to them within 8 hours. If he had gone to Kaiser, it would have been 8 weeks or 8 days.
Yeah. That was true when I came back from some long voyages. I went straight to the parasitology people at UCSF.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
yeah, normal clinics don't deal with those weird diseases that
they knew to go to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Hong Kong, which had a big parasitology, tropical disease specialists of not just China, but all Southeast Asia.
Do you want to stop recording, Dad?
Yeah, you can hit toilet spot.
Oh, thank you. Well, wait a minute. I want to ask you one question as a mathematician. How long do you think it would have taken you, if you had been the king of a Mayan king, to come up with the notion that 5 cycles of Venus equaled 8 cycles of Earth.
Yeah, I don't think I would have come up with that.
I mean, it's crazy. It's
40
crazy.
years.
I think about 60 generations is what
Well,
it
they
took.
were always looking at the sky too, they knew exactly, this is probably several generations of mathematicians looking and recording and then coming together and not one person.
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody have a particularly clever thing to say before I stop recording? All right, now we're free